Hey everybody, look, since this movie was so tense and so scary, I'm just going to keep this really light and fun, do a little review, maybe make a little drink. Oh crap. Hey everybody, welcome back to Drinks and a Movie. Chris Hamker here with you. Today we'll be talking about the new Stephen King adaptation, It. But first, let's start with a drink, and the drink I'm making is, of course, the Pennywise. The Pennywise is pretty simple. It's 1.5 parts vodka, 1 part rum cream, and half part amaretto, topped in with a cherry to make it look like the little red balloon that Pennywise is always carrying around. So let's get to it. Let's make this drink, and we'll talk about It. So It is directed by Andy Muschietti, as I think how he says his name, It is essentially about a group of bullied kids that have deemed themselves the Loser Club, band together to fight a supernatural threat that lives under the town that has been kidnapping and killing children. This supernatural threat manifests itself in the terribly creepy version of Pennywise the Dancing Clown. And that's pretty much it. It's a fairly straightforward story. Anyway, let's shake this up and see how it is. So it's supposed to, be white like the clown, and amaretto's because he's nutty. All right, it looks pretty white. And then adding the cherry in, hopefully, and then a little drops for blood on the top there. Wink. All right, let's see how this is. Let's see if we can. I can't quite see the cherry, but we can imagine it. Anyway, cheers. Here is to Stephen King's It and Pennywise cocktail. It's creamy. So first of all, let me just say, I thought this was a great movie. I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. And I think the reason for this is because of the director. All the credit has to go to Muschietti, who not only recreated a wonderfully scary and creepy character in Pennywise the Dancing Clown, who was made iconic by Tim Curry's performance from the 1990 miniseries, but he also had to juggle 7 main characters, child actors, and they weren't annoying in the least, as child actors can be sometimes. I'm not trying to be hard on child actors, but it's really hard to make a story about children compelling and not tiresome, which is the next thing he did really well. He created this wonderful story that gave time to all these characters, including Pennywise. Even it wasn't just all about him. It wasn't just all about one particular character. It was about everybody. And he also made this movie just tight and fun to watch. And even though you were being scared, it was still enjoyable, and he did this without using a lot of just tired old horror movie tropes, and I think that's really, really impressive. So first, let's talk about Bill Skarsgård's turn as Pennywise the Dancing Clown. And you may recognize the name because his father is Stellan Skarsgård, who is in Good Will Hunting and the Thor movies, the Avengers, and his brother's Alexander Skarsgård from True Blood. So it's a very prolific acting family. He had this turn as Pennywise the acting clown. He's just acting like a clown. He's not a clown professionally. He had this turn as Pennywise the Dancing Clown, but he did it in such a way that was different from Tim Curry, but also still really creepy. He had this strange, stilted and way of talking, and the way he stares into the camera was just really captivating, but also just it gets under your skin really well, like it's supposed to. He also had this kind of playful movement to his with his body that makes him look and seem really unhinged, and I loved every minute of it. Now, the kids are also really great in this movie. There's 7 of them, not one of them is a weak link. This movie is rated R, and they ask these kids to do some really adult things, but none of those things ever seemed uncharacteristic of any of them, and it all seemed very natural. I mean, they curse as kids are wont to do. They look at girls, but they didn't do it in a sleazy way. They just did it in a really natural way. The dialogue was very, I keep using the word natural, but it was just very natural the way they poked fun at each other, even in tense moments, because that's kind of how people are. They get scared, and so they revert back to like defense mechanisms, like making fun or making like inappropriate adult jokes that they probably didn't understand to begin with, but they did it anyway. And I think all this is due to the talent of these 7 kids that they chose. They were really great. They have really good chemistry as well. The last thing I loved is the feel of this movie is spot on. I mean, they just don't make movies like this much anymore, in my opinion. This movie seemed like old school Stephen King adaptations. It really reminded me a lot of Stand By Me, except with a killer clown. Or Shawshank Redemption, except with a killer clown. Or even The Mist, except, well, with less mist. Look, I love this because this movie really put these kids in real peril, and like I said before, these kind of movies just aren't made much anymore. Hollywood just doesn't seem to have the balls. It reminded me a lot of one of my favorite and grossly underrated and underseen movie of the 80s, The Monster Squad. And so just real quick, remember those movie tropes that I talked about that I hated that isn't really used all that much in this movie? One of those is the jump scare. Now, the jump scare is defined as, and I'm going to read it because I don't want to get it wrong, it's defined as a technique often used in horror films intended to scare the audience by surprising them with an abrupt change in image or event, usually occurring with a loud, frightening noise. Now, this is done in this movie. Don't get me wrong, there are jump scares, but they are what I would call legitimate jump scares. And what I mean by that is a lot of times horror movies use the jump scare just to keep the audience kind of involved and stop them from being bored. And so what kind of jump scares these are false scares, which are you get the loud noise that makes you jump, but then it's just a cat kind of, jumping in a frame and scaring the main character. Or the worst one, in my opinion, is when one of the other characters needs to get the attention of their friend, the other character in the movie. They run up and essentially just scream in their face. Nobody does this, but hey, we did it. We got the audience. We jump scared them. The difference in this movie is they do jump scares, but they're legitimate scares because they have the loud noise and the abrupt change in image, but the image and what's happening is danger to the characters. It's the monster coming to get them. It's not just some innocuous bullshit that jumps on screen just to wake you back up. And that's what I liked about this movie. It had legitimate good scares. Okay, now it's not perfect. Hardly any movie is ever perfect, so I'm just going to touch on a few things that kind of bother me a little, but they're a little nitpicky and very minor because I really enjoyed this movie. But this is also much better than you would imagine. The problems I had with this movie was Pennywise the Dancing Clown, his powers were a little vague and undefined. And my problem with that is, and I've said this time and time again, if you have a villain where his powers are vague and undefined, then he can essentially do anything he wants, which takes all the tension out of things, because you have to have rules in a horror movie or a superhero movie or something like that where there are villains. The next thing I had a problem with was the kids' ages. Some of the kids looked and seemed like 12. Some of them looked and seemed like 14 or 15 even. And so it was a little unclear as to how old the kids actually were in this. They all seemed to be friends or in the same grade, but they were also in a school which had kids that drove, like the bullies that bullied them drove away in their car. And so that was just a little unclear. I wish they would have been a little bit more clear about the ages and some of the background of the kids. All in all, I was really surprised how much I liked this movie. It was just done so well, and I'm going to give this a 4.5 drinks out of 5. I think it's one of the best horror movies in quite some time, and yeah, I really liked it. So let me know what you thought of it. Also, let me know what is your favorite scary clown in a movie. Mine is it's got to be the puppet clown from Poltergeist. That thing gave me nightmares for at least 3 weeks. I vividly remember that, and that's like from the 80s. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me, everybody. If you like this, please like, share, subscribe down here at the bottom. And cheers. Have a drink on me. Bye-bye.